So today we're going to talk about completing the square, and that's when we take an equation of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and we transform it into what's called vertex form. So we're going from standard form to vertex form, which is y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k. So there are some steps that we need to do to complete the square when x equals 1. First, we're going to group the variables together with parentheses to form a new trinomial with a blank for the missing constant c. Then we're going to find half the linear term, which is b, and square it, and then put that and the value into the blank. Then we're going to balance the equation by subtracting that value in the blank at the end, and then we'll factor the trinomial in the parentheses as a perfect square trinomial. And then we'll have it in vertex form, and that gives us the vertex of HK. Keep in mind that that vertex of HK has to be when it's x minus h. So if it says x minus h, your h is actually positive. If it says x plus h, your h is actually negative. And so that vertex HK reveals the axis of symmetry, which is x equals h. And that is that vertical line through the vertex. So let's take a look at a couple of examples, and we'll go through those steps as we complete the examples. So for problem number 1, we have f of x equals x squared plus 8x plus 6. And so again, the first step was to group the variables together with parentheses to form a new trinomial. So we have x squared plus 8x, okay? And then we want to find half that linear term. So that linear term was 8. So we have 8 over 2. And again, it was positive 8. And we're going to square that. So we have 4 squared, which is 16. So we're going to add 16 inside the parentheses. And then we're going to subtract 16 from the 6. And that is step 3. Okay. So then we can take this new trinomial, this one right here, and we can factor it. And factoring it is actually pretty easy because it's always going to be x, and then it's going to be whatever the sign is of that middle term, right? And then whatever that number was that we squared. So it's just going to be x, I'm sorry, that should be a plus 4, x plus 4, quantity squared, and then we're going to bring down what we're adding and subtracting, and so that becomes minus 10. So it's x plus 4 quantity squared minus 10. So now we're going to write our vertex, and so we have a set of parentheses because it's an ordered pair. We know that our y value is negative 10. We take that at face value. But then remember, this is an x plus 4, so that means it's a negative 4 when we're looking at the vertex. And then our axis of symmetry is just x equals whatever that x value was of the vertex. Okay, and so that's how we can complete number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. All right, we're going to use the same process. So we're going to group the variables together. So we have g of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 10. So we bring down our variables. Okay, and then we brought down the negative 10. And then again, we're going to look at what is half the negative 4 divided by 2. So that gives us negative 2 quantity, oh, we're squaring that. And negative 2 squared is going to give us a positive 4. You're always going to add that number there inside the parentheses. You're never going to subtract that, just so you know. And then remember, if we add it inside the parentheses, we have to subtract it outside. That way we're balancing the equation. Because if we just added the 4, it would become unbalanced. Okay, so now we're going to rewrite our equation. So we know we have x, and then remember it's going to be that term that we were squaring, so minus 2. And then we're going to bring down our negative 14. And so now we can find our vertex. Remember that it's x minus h. Well, that's already in the form of x minus 2, so that's a positive 2. And then we bring down our negative 14. And then our axis of symmetry is x equals whatever that x value was for the vertex. Okay. So let's turn to the next page. Now, there's a couple that I would like for you to try. Number 2, but we do need to correct a couple of mistakes right here. This should be a 10 on number 1, and this 10 here on number 2 should be a 20. Those are just a couple of typos. Okay, so now you're ready to go. So go ahead and hit the pause button, try number 1, and then come back and see what number 1 looks like. Okay, so now you can check your answer for number 1. And you can see the work for number 1, where we've brought down our x squared and our negative 10x. We added 25 because half of negative 10 is negative 5, and then when you square that, you get positive 25. So we add that inside the parentheses, subtract it outside the parentheses. So then when we factor the x squared minus 10x plus 25, it becomes x minus 5 quantity squared, and then 10 minus 25 is negative 15. So our vertex is 5, negative 15, and our axis of symmetry is x equals 5. All right, so go ahead and try number 2. All right, so let's take a look at number 2. We bring down our x squared and our plus 6x inside the parentheses, and then we take half of that 6, which is 3, and we square it, which gives us 9. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 9, and then minus 20 minus 9. So then when we factor the x squared plus 6x plus 9, we get x plus 3 quantity squared minus 29. And then remember, the general form of the vertex form of a quadratic is x minus h quantity squared plus k. So that x minus h means that when we have x plus 3, that's really x minus a negative 3. And so our x value, or our h value, we should say, for the vertex is negative 3. And then the y value is just your negative 29. You take that at face value. And your axis of symmetry is x equals negative 3. All right, so go ahead and complete problems 3 through 6, and then you can check your answers with the teacher.